So types of budget, there are three types. Okay. So today we are going to discuss measures of government deficit. Before discussing that, we will discuss one small topic here, that is types of budget. So there are three types: balanced, surplus, deficit. What do you mean by balanced? Anyone? So government budget is said to be a balanced budget if estimated government receipts are equal to the government expenditure. When receipts and expenditure are equal, okay, in that case we will call it as what? Balanced budget. Clear? So far we have discussed about receipts and expenditure. So revenue receipts and capital receipts. Revenue expenditure and capital expenditure we have discussed. I hope you all remember those points. So our government can, the government can able to what collect the revenue receipts based upon what tax revenue and non-tax. Again, tax itself we can divide it into direct tax and indirect tax. So these are the two sources of revenue. That is what receipts. And second thing is non-tax revenue like fee, estates, and so many things we have discussed. Then capital receipts. So it is what either through borrowing from other countries or else from post small savings or recovery of loan. So these are all the what capital receipts. So expenditure. What is our expenditure? The what the salaries, the PF, the gratitude, what we have to pay to the government staffs. That is what revenue receipts and revenue expenditure. And capital expenditure is what purchase of machineries or any equipments. Then repaying the loan, all those things comes under capital expenditure. Okay, fine. So when expenditure and receipts are equal, that means a government's budgets, receipts and expenditure are equal, that it is called as what? Balanced budget. When suppose it is estimated government receipts are more than the estimated government expenditure, then the budget is termed as surplus budget. Surplus budget help to reduce the level of aggregate demand in the country, which is required during excess demand to the control inflation. So what do you mean by surplus budget? What is surplus? That means very high. Okay. That is receipt is more than expenditure. If estimated government receipts are more than estimated expenditure, then budget is termed as what? Surplus budget. Okay, so when we are getting more income, when our incomes are more than our expenditure, that case we will call it as what? Surplus budget. Okay, I'm talking about the government budget. So here, surplus budget helps to reduce the level of aggregate demand. So what is demand? Already we have discussed the needs of the people. So what about the aggregate demand? The overall requirement of a country during the period of 1 year. Okay, so when aggregate demand, okay, so when we have more receipts, automatically what will happen? So the surplus budget helps to reduce the level of aggregate demand. What is aggregate demand? The more requirement of the nations. So it helps us to what? Reduce the inflation. We can able to control the inflation. What is inflation? There is increase in price is called as inflation. So surplus budget helps us to reduce all the expenses, all the increase in price. That is we called as inflation. Then what is deficit budget? So that is opposite. The expenditure will be more than the receipts. Okay. So if estimated government receipts are less than the estimated government expenditure, then budget is known as deficit budget. Okay. So these are the three types of budget. Please remember in your mind, when government budget is equal to, that is when during the government budget, when receipts and expenditure are equal, it is called as balanced. When receipts are more than expenditure, it is called as surplus. Surplus means the sense excess. Okay, adhigama. So when receipts is less than expenditure, it is called as deficit. Deficit in the sense it is also called as shortage or else pattame. Okay. So these are the three different types of budget. Have you all got my point? Shall we go for next?
Yes,
Guys,
sir.
are you all there with me?
Yes, sir.
So measures of government deficit. Okay. So what is deficit? When expenditure is more than receipts. Okay, let us discuss. So measures of government deficit. Budgetary deficit is defined as excess of total expenditure, excess of total estimated expenditure over total estimated revenue. Okay, so when revenue is less than the expected expenditure. Estimation in the is a word which refers the budget. Okay, so when the expenditure is more than the revenue, more than the income, then it is called as what? Deficit. That is what budgetary deficit. So when the government spends more than it collects, then it incur a budgetary deficit. Okay. So for example, so many developed countries, so their revenue will be less, but the expenditure what they are doing will be more. Okay. Even last class we have I have shared you one image which states that for in Gujarat for constructing Sardar Vallabhai Patel statue, we have spent 3,000 crore, and for PM office 700 crore. Okay, so like that expenditure will be more than the income. So, in the revenue there are again, with reference to budget of Indian government, budgetary deficit can be three types: revenue deficit, fiscal deficit, and primary deficit. Okay, please try to understand the meaning for deficit is shortage, kamia, patrakurai. Okay, so when expenditure is more than the income, okay, in that case definitely we will call it as deficit. So what is budgetary deficit? While estimating, the expenditure will be high compared to the estimated income. That we will call it as budgetary deficit. So we will discuss one by one. First one is revenue deficit. Revenue deficit is concerned with revenue expenditure and revenue receipts of the government. If it refers to excess of revenue expenditure over revenue receipts during the given fiscal year. Okay. So revenue deficit. Okay, we have discussed in previous topic. We have discussed revenue receipts and revenue expenditure. Have you all remember those points? So through direct tax, through indirect tax, non-tax revenue, these are the sources for our country to get the revenue receipts. Okay. So what happened during the fiscal year? Fiscal, the meaning of fiscal is what? Financial year. Okay, during the financial or accounting year, we all know very well that April 1st to March 31st is the accounting year. So during that accounting year, if you take the government revenue receipts is less than expenditure. In that case, that is what I am trying to say. Revenue expenditure is more than revenue receipt, then it is called as what? Revenue deficit. Got my point, guys? Rida,
Sir.
clear? Are you following me? So how can we find revenue deficit? That is revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts. For a small example, இப்போ Abhishek ஒரு business பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காரு. So monthly he is getting 50,000 rupees receipts. Okay, revenue receipts வந்துட்டு இருக்கு. But revenue expenditure வந்து what? So 50,000 rupees he is getting revenue receipts. But expenditure என்ன ஆகுது? 60,000 ஆகுது. Okay. So you need to pay loan, you need to pay what so many things. Okay, you need to pay salary, the dues. So expenditure is more than income. So if in this business he is getting 50,000, but expenditure is what 60,000. So what is the revenue deficit? 10,000 rupees. Okay. So how can we find the revenue deficit? That is expenditure, revenue expenditure minus revenue receipts. So this is the formula. So implications of revenue deficits. So how can we implications in the sense how can we rectify? So it is a problem for us. So revenue receipts is less than expenditure. A very good example is state transportation. Have you all seen? Have you heard about that? State transportation, that is SETC. Government bus எல்லாம் பார்த்துருக்கீங்க இல்லையா? Every time they will say that loss. What is the reason for loss ன்னு பார்த்தோம்னாக்கா அந்த பஸ்ல கிடைக்கக்கூடிய இன்கம் வந்து என்னது எக்ஸ்பெண்டிச்சரோட கம்மியா இருக்குன்னு சொல்லி they will give us a statement. கேள்விப்பட்டிருக்கீங்களா? Have you all heard that, guys?
Yes, sir.
Often state transportation, Tamil Nadu State Transportation Corporation will say what revenue deficit. That means the revenue what they are getting through their water service, but the expenditure is more than the revenue. So they will say revenue deficit. So that is what an example. So how can we correct those situations? That is what we will call it as implications. Okay. So first implication is what? It initiates the inability of the government to meet its regular and recurring expenditure in the proposed budget. Okay. So regular, so the budget what we have made in the what we have framed and we have discussed in front of president and what the government is trying to follow, that is what that shows when revenue is deficient. It shows that our government failed to what to meet the regular expenditures. Okay, so that's the first implication. And what's the second one? It implies that okay, government is dissaving. What do you mean by dissaving? Anyone? What is the meaning of saving? So we used to save. So when can we save money? When our expenditure is when our income is less than sorry when our income is more than our expenditure. Yes, yes, yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Earning 1 lakh, our income is 1 lakh, but our expenditure is 30,000. Then how many rupees we can save? 70,000 rupees we can able to save. So when revenue deficit, what will happen? Automatically, the government it is not possible for them to save the money. Yes. So first thing it says the implication is so the revenue deficit says first point government made a improper planning. With that we can't able to meet the regular expenditure. The second thing is this savings. Okay, it is not possible for us to save since expenditure is more than income. And third reason, it also implies the government has to make a deficit from capital receipts. That is through borrowings or disinvestment. It means revenue deficit either leads to increase in liability in the form of borrowing or reduce the assets through disinvestment. For example, any company, let me discuss. when they don't have when they are not getting more revenue, what they will do? Revenue illa, varamaanam illa. We can take this today. What happened tomorrow onwards? I think 6th May 6th onwards, only 12 hours a bakery can function, and grocery shops and vegetable shops they can able to function only up to afternoon 12 p.m. After that, they must close the shops, and that bus and trains must function with only 50 percentage of the passengers. இப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டாங்க. ஸோ அப்போ என்ன ஆகும்? the income of business will be reduced. Income வந்து கம்மியாகும். When income automatically reduces, what we will do? Either we will borrow money. ஆமாவா இல்லையா? Yes. So we will borrow money, or other option is what? Either we need to sell some of our property. Yes or no? If you or me, we will do the same. When our revenue is less than the expenditure, automatically for meet the day-to-day balance to recurring everyday activity, we need to borrow finance, or else we need to do disinvestment. What do you mean by the word disinvestment? Selling of our assets. Okay. So there is a third implication. Implication in a sense that shows revenue deficit shows. First implication is what? Government made a improper budget, and second thing is government failed to do savings because expenditure is more than the income. And third implication is when due to this revenue deficit, what happened? Either we need to borrow, the government has to borrow, or else we need to sell our assets. That is what this investment. Clear? Are you following me? And fourth one is use of capital receipts for meeting the extra consumption expenditure lead an inflationary situation in the economy. Higher borrower increases the future burden in the terms of loan amount and interest payment, and increasing the such interest burden will lead to increase the revenue expenditure in further. This will result in further rise in revenue deficit. Okay. So what is capital receipts? Anyone? Capital. What are the sources of capital receipts? Borrowing, disinvestment, then small savings. Hello guys, are you all there with me? Just turn back your page and can you able to refer the sources of capital receipts? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Brinda, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I just turn back the page and find out the sources of capital receipts. There they are mentioned. Definitely there they are mentioned. First source will be borrowing, second source will be disinvestment, third might be small savings. So when we are using this, okay, so can use capital receipts for meeting extra consumption expenditure lead to an inflationary situation in the economy. What do you mean by inflationary? There is increase in prices. So how prices will be increased? For example, you can see the price of petrol, diesel. It is very high compared to any other countries. What's the reason? Because of this revenue deficit. Why? Because when we borrow more money, so automatically what will happen? We need to pay the money along with interest. We have to pay the principal amount along with the interest. So automatically what will happen? For the next fiscal year, we have to face extra burden. So in that case, what will in this case, this leads inflation. Inflation in the sense what? So increase in price. Okay, so when government face revenue deficit, they will increase the price. So automatically now, so we need to. So when we don't have this revenue receipt, when we don't have, இப்போ நமக்கு வந்து இந்த கவர்மெண்ட்ல இந்த இஷ்யூ இல்லைனாக்கா பெட்ரோல் பிரைஸ் டீசல் பிரைஸ் எல்லாம் வந்து 50 rupees 60 rupees இருந்திருக்கும். So what happened to balance that revenue deficit? Government somehow they need to increase the what revenue. அப்ப என்ன பண்ணுவாங்க? Automatically they will increase the prices. Okay, to overcome that situation. That inflation will lead to what? It will directly affect the what our livelihood. Are you all there with me? Can you able to
Yes,
understand the extent? The last one is high revenue deficit gives a warning signal to government to either crucial its sorry curtail its expenditure or increase its revenue. Okay, so so at finally, so what do you mean by curtail? Anyone? Either they have to reduce the expenses. Are you all there with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
yes, sir.
So curtail is reduce the expenditures. For example, the salary of the minister will be reduced, and the allowances, other allowances like car, then bodyguards, quarters. So the other expenditure, the unwanted expenditure, we have to reduce. That is the first the government has to do first of all, or else they need to increase the revenue. So what are the sources they can able to increase the revenue? That they have to identify. If the government fail to do, then it will be a very critical situation for the government. So these are the implications of revenue deficit. So measure to revenue deficit. So how can we measure? ஸோ ரெவென்யூ டிஃபிசிட்னா என்னன்னு நமக்கு எல்லாம் தெரியும். அதாவது நம்ம கவர்மெண்ட்டுடைய இன்கம் வந்து என்னவா இருக்கும்? கம்மியாக இருக்கும். தென் எக்ஸ்பெண்டிச்சர் அப்படின்னா எக்ஸ்பெண்டிச்சர் வில் பி மோர். ஸோ when expenditures is more, automatically we will call it as what? Deficit. Okay. So here, first thing for the measures to reduce revenue deficit. First thing எப்படி நம்ம reduce பண்ணலாம்? First வந்து என்ன பண்ணணும்? The revenue expenditure. Reduce expenditure. Increase revenue. So here the very last point we have discussed it, curtail expenditure and increase the revenue. So reduce expenditure. Government should take serious steps to reduce its expenditure and avoid unproductive or unnecessary expenditure. So like in the reconstruction of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel statue 3,000 crore, and like that unwanted expenditure, whatever we are doing, we need to immediately stop those expenditure. We need to cut short those expenditures. And second thing is what we need to do. We need to generate some sources how we can able to get income. That is the second point. Increase revenue. So how can we increase revenue? So either we need to what do some investments. We need to give some permissions to do what operate new business. So all opening a new industries in a backward area. So all those things will help us to what helpful for us to increase the revenue. Clear? Got my point? Any doubts?
No, sir.
Ravi, can you please pass?